Assalamu alaikum and a very pleasant morning, girls. Today we are going to see the Glass Menagerie, scene 7, the final scene. In the previous scene, we have seen that Jim has arrived for dinner. Okay, yes or no? And Laura is very scared and hesitant, and she is not able to join the dinner, right? Okay. This scene we are going to see. The scene begins half an hour later than the previous scene. Dinner is just being finished in the upstairs area, which is concealed by the drawn curtains. As the curtain raises, Laura is still huddled upon the sofa, her feet drawn under her head resting on a pale blue pillow, her eyes wide and mysteriously watchful. The new floor lamp, with its shade of rose colored silk, gives a soft, becoming light to her face, bringing out the fragile, unearthly prettiness which usually escapes attention. Now, as the curtain raises, as the scene starts, we can able to see Laura. Laura is still resting in the sofa. Her feet is drawn under her head resting on a pale blue color pillow. Her eyes are wide and mysteriously watchful. The new floor lamp, which is giving a rose color shade, and it's becoming a brightness, a light to her face. Okay, it is a very fragile movement, a prettiness we can see. Okay, this which can draw our attention. Is it clear? Here, light go out during the dinner. Jim meets Laura. Laura becomes close to Jim. Jim bids farewell. Amanda accuses Tom. Tom bids farewell. Here, light go out during dinner. With usually escape attention, there is a steady murmur of rain. Now, we can hear the murmuring sound of rain. Here, there are drizzling. Okay, but it is slackening and stops soon after the scene begins. The air outside becomes pale and luminous as the moon breaks out. A moment of the curtain raises, the light in both rooms flickers and go out. Okay, Jim is aware of the reason for the power of failure, as he knows that Tom has not paid the light bill, that is electricity bill. Okay, so he calls Tom humorously Mr. Light Bulb. Amanda laughs nervously, hiding her embarrassment. The light suspension of a public service appears on the screen. She tries to humor Jim by asking him where Moses was when the lights went out. As Jim does not know the answer, Amanda herself gives the answer, saying that Moses was in the dark. When the lights went out, Jim laughs at the joke appreciatively. Now what happens? Laura is taking rest in the sofa. Lights go off. Raining outside. Jim checks electric fuses. Amanda asks Tom about electric bill. Amanda gives a punishment to Tom. Now she is embarrassed because the electric officer came there, and he has taken the fuse. Okay, because of that the light has gone. Okay, so she's feeling very embarrassed in front of Jim. So she is punishing Tom, and she's calling you're negligent. Okay, then Amanda asks everybody to sit still. She will light the candles that they have luckily on the table and asks for a match, and Jim gives her one and she thanks him for that. Now what she's doing, she is lighting the candle because they are having luckily they are having on the table. Okay, Jim asks her not to mind it. She guesses that the fuse has burned out and asks if he can tell out fuse, as she and Tom are poor at mechanics. She advises everyone to be careful and not bump into something. Jim asks Amanda where the fuse box is. She tells him that it is the right there next to the stuff and asks him if he can see anything. Jim asks her to wait a minute, saying that electricity is a mysterious thing. She goes on to observe that they live in such a mysterious universe. She further observes that some people say that science clears up all the mysteries for us, but in her opinion, that it only creates more. She again asks Jim if he has found the fuse box and checked the fuses. Tom tells her that all the fuses look okay to him. Now Amanda has understood that Tom has paid the light bill and she feels sorry for having trusted him. Jim humorously remarks to Amanda that Shakespeare, Tom, probably wrote a poem on the light bill, and maybe the poem would win a $10 prize. Amanda further complains that they will just have to spend the remainder of the evening in the 19th century, that is, in the darkness. Edison made the mazed lamp. Jim supportively asserts that candlelight is his favorite kind of light. Amanda says that Jim's assertion shows that he is romantic, but there is no excuse for Tom, who is responsible for plunging into darkness. She is glad that they finished their dinner, and it was very considerate of the park corporation to let them get through dinner before they plugged them into everlasting darkness. Jim laughs heartily at the remark of Amanda. Now she is managing the situation, and Jim also adjusting. Okay, and they both understood everything. Is it clear? Okay. Then Jim meets Laura. Laura is sitting nervously. Jim encourages to speak, talks about exhibition in Chicago. Jim says old-fashioned girl. She reminds him by telling, gets autograph. She shows favorite glass animal. Here, now Laura is sitting very nervously. Okay, and Jim encourages her to speak. Amanda then tells Tom that as the penalty for his carelessness, he can help her wash the dishes. That is the punishment Amanda is giving to Tom. Jim offers to help her, but she asks him to give company to Laura, who is alone in the parlor. She gives him her lovely old candle burn and some wine to give company to Laura and cause her drink a little wine. While Amanda and Tom go to the kitchen to wash their dishes, Jim proceeds to the parlor with wine on one hand and the candelabrum on the other. Laura sits up nervously as he enters. Her speech at first is low and breathless from the almost intolerable strain of being alone with a stranger. The legend, "I don't suppose you remember me at all," appears on the screen. That is, in her first speech in the scene, before Jim's warmth overcomes her paralyzes shyness. Laura's voice is thin and breathless, as though she has run up steep flight of stairs. Now she has become very nervous and breathless. She is not able to speak at all. After preliminary exchange of hellos, Jim asks Laura if she is feeling better, and Laura says that she is better and thanks for his kind gesture. Now, after some time, after saying that is normal, hello, hi, bye, like that, what they are telling, she is now comfortable. Okay, then Jim offers Laura a little dandelion wine with a warning: drink it but don't get drunk. Okay, they both of them sit on the floor with a candelabrum between them. Jim tries to help Laura overcome her some smothering shyness by his warm and intimate tone and cordial behavior. He offers her a piece of chewing gum, which she politely refuses. Then, with her permission, he chews a piece of and wonders at the remarkable fortune made by the guy who invented the first piece of chewing gum. And after that, they are talking about the Chicago. And he tells Laura that he hopes that she does not consider him if to be personal. Laura asks for a piece of chewing gum from Jim to hide his discomfort. Then she asks him if he has kept up with his singing, for she remembers that he had a very beautiful voice. Jim asks Laura with a surprise is if she had heard him singing. That is, by talking what they are doing, they are becoming very close, and she says that your voice is very beautiful. You sing very beautifully. For that, Jim is very surprised. Have you heard my voice as singing? Like that, he is asking. Okay, Laura tells him that she has heard him sing very often and asks him memory that Laura is the girl whom he used to call Blue Roses. Okay, and now they becomes very close, and he also remembers her. Okay, then the Blue Roses name. Okay, Laura is the girl whom he used to call Blue Roses. He had the name on his tongue when Laura opened the door. He observes that it is very funny that one's memory plays wonderful tricks. But he did not connect Laura with high school somehow or other. How is the school? He is asking about the schooling. He did not even know that she was Shakespeare's sister, that is Tom's sister. He feels sorry that he could not recognize her. Laura tells Jim that she did not expect him to barely knew her while at school. Okay, then she knew that Tom used to know Jim a little in high school. Is it clear, ma? Okay. And he's asking about how is the schooling. That is, for that she is replying, I did not finish secondary school or business college because of her shyness, because of her disability. She is not able to face the people. Okay. Then Jim tells to Laura that he had found her to be shy with people. Laura admits that she tried to overcome her shyness but could not. Jim advises her to give up her shyness by and by. He tries to build up confidence in Laura by telling her that people are not so dreadful when she gets to know them. That is what she has to remember. She must know that like her everybody has problem. It is wrong on the part of Laura to think that she is the only one disappointed. Okay, now that is Jim is building a confidence in Laura that she is not the only girl who is having problem in life. Everyone has the problem. For that, what we have to do is we have to overcome from the problem. So we should not think about the problem only. We have to overcome from that problem. Is it clear? Then he asks Laura if she remembers that wonderful write-up he had in the Torch. Laura says that she does. Then Jim says that write-up said he was bound to success in anything he went into. That is, he is giving many more explanation about success, and Jim wants Laura to overcome her shyness. Then and by. Okay, then only she will be successful. Laura tells him that she will be 24 in June. Jim observes that she is not old age, or Laura agree with him. Then Jim asks Laura if she finishes her high school. She replies she dropped out because she made bad grades in her final examination. That is, she has not continued her schooling, either her business college. Is it clear? Then Jim is asking about what she is an expert of. Okay, ask her what exactly she is doing now. Now that is, Jim is asking, either you are not going to school or business college, what you are doing now. She tells him that she does practically nothing. Then she quickly adds that does not means that she sits around doing nothing. Her glass collection takes up a good deal of time. A glass is something that one has to take good care of it. That is, she's telling, I'm not doing anything, but I'm having a glass menagerie, that is a zoo, that is animal glass made by glass. So one needs to be taken care, a good care of the glasses. Okay, she struggles hard to talk to Jim freely because of her acute shyness. Jim then remarks that the trouble with Laura is that she is suffering from inferiority complex. So you should not think that you are inferior. Okay, you are equal with everyone. That makes one low rate oneself. He understand it because he had it too. Although his case was not so bad as here seems to be. He had it until he took up public speaking, developed his voice, and learned that I had an aptitude for science. And as they are talking, she shows that the glass menagerie to Jim, and by showing him, she says that the unicorn is my favorite. Now he wants to know that what kind of glass it is. Laura tells him that her glass collection consists of ornaments mostly. Most of them are little animals made out of glass, the tiniest little animals in the world. She takes one of her glass animals, a tiny unicorn, and her favorite piece. She says that the unicorn is her favorite piece, which is 13 years old, and gives it to Jim. As he stretches out his hand to receive it, the music, the glass menagerie, is played. She asks Jim to handle it carefully, for it's so delicate that if he breathes, it breaks. Jim says that he had better not take it for he is pretty clumsy with things. But Laura asks him to go on, for she will trust him. Her glass unicorn. Jim asks her if the unicorns are not extinct in the modern world. Laura says that she knows that they are, referring to the unicorn on his palm. Jim says that poor little fellow must feel sort of lonesome. Laura smiles at his remark and says that even if he does not complain about it. He stares on a shelf with some horses that do not have horns, and all of them seem to get along nicely together. Now Jim asks Laura how she knows about it. Laura lightly remarks that he has not heard any arguments among them. Jim laughs at the humorous observation of Laura and asks her where he shall set the unicorn. Laura asks him to put him on the table for all of her glass animals like a change of scenery once in a while. As Jim stretches, he finds a shadow becoming big, and he draws the attention of Laura to it. Laura says that it stretches across the ceiling. Then what happens? They hear the glass menagerie music, and after that they are talking about the glass animals. That is, she's explaining everything, and the parodies dance all across the alley. They started dancing. Jim asked Laura if would mind dancing with him. Laura hesitates, saying that she would step on him, but Jim supportively says that he is not made out of glass, and swings Laura into motion. They do a clumsy waltz and suddenly bump into the table. What happens? As they are dancing, accidentally they bump the glass menagerie table, and the unicorn falls and its horn is broken. He is different from the other. That is, as they bump the table, what happens? The unicorn falls down and the horns broken. Laura takes his light and says that the maimed unicorn is just like all the horses. Now the unicorn has become the normal horses. Jim feels sorry that he should have caused the tragedy, but Laura puts him at ease, saying that it may only a blessing in disguise, for the unicorn will feel more at home with other horses, the one that do not have horns. Jim compliments Laura for her sense of humor. They both laugh heartily. And now he will feel more at home with the other animals. She is not taking very seriously. Okay. Jim then says to Laura that he is glad to see that she has a sense of humor. She begins to compliment Laura on being a different kind of girl, indeed a pretty girl. Then Jim asks Laura if she minds her telling her that. Jim says that he means it is a nice way. He asks Laura if anyone has ever told her that she was pretty. Jim then tells Laura that she is really pretty and in a different way from anyone else. Okay, then Laura turns away nearly faint with novelty of her emotion. Jim then says with the earnestness that he wishes that Laura were his sister. He would teach her to have some confidence in herself. The different people are not like other people, but being different is nothing to be ashamed of. At this point, music swells tumultuously. That is, the music as goes on. He suddenly turns her about and kisses her on the lips. When he realizes her, Laura sinks on the sofa with a bright dazed look. Jim backs away and fishes in his pocket for a cigarette. Legend on the screen, so we know Jim calls himself a Stumble John for having kissed Laura. He feels that he should not have done that. Okay. Jim asks her if she smokes. He gently asks her if she would like to have a mint. He tells her that his pocket is a regular drugstore. Okay, addressing Laura, that is Jim, says that if he had a sister like her, he would do the same thing as Tom. He would bring out fellows and introduce her to them. He would bring out the right type of boy to appreciate her. Only things that Tom did was to make a mistake about him. Probably Tom thought that he would be able to admire her and ask her for a date. Then Jim further tells Laura that love is something that changes the whole world. It happened that Betty's aunt took sick. She got a wire and had to go to Centralia. So when Tom asked him to dinner, he naturally accepted the invitation, not knowing that Tom meant him to be a gentleman caller on Laura. That is, I'm sorry, I must go, I'm engaged to Betty. Okay, he curses him for out of stepping his limits by kissing Laura and making her think that he has a crush for her. Jim tells Laura that he wishes that she would say something. She bites her lips, which was trembling, and then bravely smiles. She opens her hand again and the broken glass ornament. She gently takes his hand and raises it level with her own. She carefully places the unicorn in the palm of his hand, then pushes his finger closed upon it. Jim asks Laura what she is doing that for and if she wanted him to have the unicorn. Then Amanda enters gaily, commenting that the air is delightful after the shower. She informs Jim that the gentleman caller that she has especially made for them all a little liquid refreshment, fruit punches. She then asks Jim knows the song about lemonade which she sings for him. Lemonade, and the song goes on. Jim, feeling uneasy, says that he has never heard it. Amanda turns to Laura and inquires why she looks so very serious. Jim cut in and says to Amanda that he and Laura were having a serious discussion. Amanda says that means that both of them have become better acquainted and she is very happy about that. Jim says that it is so. Then Amanda comments that the modern young people are much more serious minded than her generation. Now Jim says that he is engaged to Betty, and he has to go, and he is asking sorry with Laura because of his close behavior for that he is waiting for to say something, that is Laura should say something. For that Laura is gaining her courage, and what she is doing, she is taking her broken unicorn and placing in Jim's hand and saying that take care this, like that. Okay, and after that Amanda enters there, and she is asking about the refreshment, and she is asking why Laura is very serious, and for that Jim is replying they were having a serious discussion. Jim, however, says to Amanda that he must be going now, but Amanda says that they will let him go on condition the next time he stays longer with them. Okay. She asks Jim if he can call on Saturday night to suit his working hours. Jim humorously remarked that he has a couple of time o'clock to punch, one at morning, another one at night. Surprised at Jim's remark, she asked him if he is working double shift. Jim then clarifies to her that he goes to office in the morning as regularly as he goes to meet Betty, whom he is dating, at night. Amanda is shocked beyond expression to learn that Jim is having a serious romance with Betty, and they are going to be married the second Sunday in June. Gulping her disappointment, she says that she is pleased to hear about it. She then tells Jim that Tom has not told them about his romancing Betty. Jim tells her that he has not told anyone in the warehouse about it, as he feared their teasing, calling him Romeo and stuff like that. Okay. Amanda becomes terribly distressed at the bad turn of events because she was very disappointed by hearing Jim is dating with Betty, and she becomes very disturbed and frustrated. She cannot swallow the idea that the gentleman caller was one who is going to marry soon. She is terribly angry with Tom for having created such a mess, as Tom also don't know about the engagement, but she becomes very angry. Okay, and Jim leaves the home. How could you play such a mean joke on Laura? Now that is Amanda becomes very angry, and she's terribly angry with Tom, and she's scolding Tom. Okay, Tom for having created such a mess. She summons Tom and admonishes him for a cruel joke he had played on them. Tom asks her what does she mean by saying this. Amanda asked Tom why he did not tell her that Jim was already engaged. Tom is shocked too. Learned that Jim was already engaged. Tom is shocked too, and Amanda cannot understand how Tom would not know his best friend was going to be married. Tom tells his mother he goes to the warehouse at work and to probe into the personal affairs of people. Amanda accuses Tom that he does not know things anywhere, for he lives in a dream and he manufactures illusion. Okay, Amanda asks him where he is going now. Tom replies that he is going to the movies. Amanda takes exception to the irresponsible conduct of Tom. She accuses him for having fooled them by making them spend their energy, money and time on Jim, the gentleman caller, whose marriage has already been fixed. Tom does not think about his deserted mother and his unmarried sister, who is crippled and has no job. He is selfish to the core and he will not let anything interfere with his selfish pleasure of going to the movies. Tom angrily retorts that he will not go the movies but elsewhere. Amanda angrily shouts at him, calling him a selfish dreamer, and asks him to go to the moon then. Don't you care about all the time and money spent on this dinner? Now, again, Tom comes to as a narrator. Okay, Tom, the narrator, brings the play to a close, to an end, by telling us what he did after that. Okay, I was fired from the warehouse and left St. Louis. He tells us that he did not go to the moon, rather, he went much further for time in the longest distance between two places. Soon after that, he was fired at the warehouse writing a poem on the lid of a shoebox. She left St. Louis. He descended the steps of his fire escape for the last time and followed for them in his father's footsteps, attempting to find in motion what was lost in space. He travelled around a great deal. Then, all at once, my sister touches my shoulder. I turned around and looked into her eyes. He tried to leave his sister Laura behind him, but he is more faithful than he intended to be. He reaches for a cigarette. He crosses the street. He runs into the movies or a bar. He buys a drink. He speaks to nearest stranger, anything that can blow her candles out. Laura bends over the candles, for nowadays the world is lit by lighting. He asks Laura to blow out her candles and bids her goodbye. She blows the candles out. The scene dissolves. Okay, girls, by this the full play has ended. The Glass Menagerie. Girls, please listen the video carefully. If you have any doubts, do ask, girls. Then only I can understand you have understood anything. Okay, if you have any doubts, please ask. Surely I'll clarify your doubts. Okay, girls, take care. Thank you. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz.